Zok Tehillah Gemara. Tonu Rabban. Vaymer b'shar mivavor. We have a brisa that's going to analyze the relationship between all the different mazikin and bring out the differences in certain chedushim in the law. So Chaymer b'shar mivavar. There are chumras that shar have that bar doesn't, and Chaymer b'bar b'shar. And there's also chumras that bar has that shar doesn't have. Chaymer b'shar mivavar. In what ways is shar more chomer than bar? Shashar mishalom is a koyver. If a shar kills a person, the bailam has to pay koyver. V'chayv b'shloshim shalavet. If a shar kills an eved, the bailam has to pay the adai. Nigmar dinai. If a shar kills a person, you have to kill the shar. Once they make a mardin on the shar before it's killed, asabana, the shar is asabana, and vidarkoi leiloich ulahazik. A shar is like Amazon. It delivers the damage to its victim. They don't have to come pick it up. Mash'enkin b'bar, bar doesn't have any of these features. Now, this v'dakar leiluch l'hazik, why is that a chumr? So Rashi says, had lechashav shubal echayim mash'enkin b'bar, because that's an additional difference between a shar and a bar, that a shar is an alive thing. Mishum, and that's what the Mishnah says, Roy is Abazah ben Rachayim. Zok Toisvis, Mishum Dahava Bechalal, Vedarkoi, Leilach Ulahazik, because that's what the Brisa, that's included in what the Brisa says, Vedarkoi, Leilach Ulahazik. And Lo Shaykh Lomisti Gavibar, Shein Balachayim. Vechavnos Ulahazik, which are not the alarm is really supposed to be for 6 o'clock. Every morning at 7, right before 7, so it's ring to remind us to go to Shachas. Oh, so it's so that I don't go over. Someone wanted to send me a subtle hint, so he set up the alarm clock. And it doesn't mention Kavanas Lahazik because bar is not Balchayim. Okay, so those are the features that shor has that chamor doesn't. And bar, chaymer bebar b'shar. And in what respect is bar more chamer than shor? Shabar tchilas asiyah shel nevek. A bar is a menace. It's a menace to society the moment it's built. It's built as a problem. A shor is a regular animal. It's not designed to do damage. So things go wrong, it causes damage. But that's not the feature of a shor. And umud mitchilasa. Of course, there's no tam and balmum. It's an inanimate object, so it's just as likely to do damage the first time as it is in any other time. Masha'en kein b'shar. Now we're going to compare shar to eish. Chaymer b'shar mi b'eish, and chaymer b'eish mi b'shar. Chaymer b'shar mi b'eish. Shashar mechshalom koiver, v'chay b'shloshim shalavet, nigmar dinei aser ba'ana. So far, it's the same as the comparison to bar. But here's where there's a difference. If you give over a shor to a cheres shoyte v'katan, like the brisa we just learned at the end of yesterday's year, chayiv, you'll be chayiv. Mashenkin be'esh, you will not be chayiv. And the Gemara says, it's according to Rish Lakish, where we say it's koich acham urva, right? We say that if I gave even a tied up ox to a cheres shoyte v'katan, it's the derech for it to become untied. But if they gave a gechelas to a cheres shoyte v'katan, the gechelas would end up just going out. It's the cheresh that made the damage. It's the cheresh that made the mazik. He made this gechelas into a shalhaves. He made it into something that is a menace. So therefore, you can't be mechayev the Bible. And even according to Rabbi Yochanan, that if you give a cheresh shoyte v'katan a shalhaves, your potter, that's because he had to deliver the shalhaves somewhere. So he actually was involved in creating the damage. Mashenkein, if you gave him a dangerous shor, an untied shor, or an unsecured bar, he doesn't do anything. He's just neglecting to do anything at all. And the damage is directly from you. Chamer be'eish b'shar. Eish has features that are more chamer than shor. So eish mu'edis mitchilasa. And eish is mood, the first time it damages, it's a mood already. Mashenkein b'shar. Shor, if it's at least Karen, it first is a tam and then it becomes a mood. So we did the shor bar thing, the shor eish thing. Now we're doing the eish bar thing. How is bar more chomer than eish? A bar is a menace the moment it's created. Fire sometimes is necessary. We use fire for good things. The fire gone wrong is a mazik. A bar must be the cheresh of the cotton is chayiv. Like we just discussed.
Yeah, but even if you're not still chayiv.
You're still chayiv of what?
For a bar. That wins is that it's guarded by a.
Yes, if you give it over to a cheresh you'll be chayiv. But if you give an eish to a cheresh you won't be chayiv. Right? If you give a gachelas or a shalheves one derechim. If you give
if it's covered and you give it over to someone to watch it.
The Gemara on the base told us yesterday that since a bar is going to become uncovered naturally, its cover loosens.
Yes.
If you gave it to a cheresh of a cotton, that's called that you neglected part of its shmira. It's called the wording of the Mishnah is the wording of the Mishnah was.
But I missed something. Isn't the penalty the same as if you don't give it over to anyone to guard?
Yes, but if you gave it to a cheresh of a cotton, if you don't give it to anyone to guard, and it was and if it's totally neglected, it will be the same as giving it to a cheresh of a cotton. Does a cheresh of a cotton have any impact at all? Tosfos actually discusses that it does have some impact, but we won't get into that.
Okay.
But I'll call upon them. You're right. So you're saying it's not the fact that I gave it to the cheresh of the cotton; it's the fact that I was chavti b'shmirasi. I didn't fulfill my responsibility of shmira. Right. So it's not like the cheresh of the cotton make it worse. Okay. Now in this case, the cheresh of the cotton actually did make it worse. They uncovered the bar and did damage.
Yeah.
But you're chayiv because even had they not, you've already given over. You've already reneged on your responsibility. But by eish, since it won't do anything by itself without the added help, either the delivery or getting it to flame up, depending on who you learn like, there you won't be chayiv. Okay, so let's see again. Chaymer ba'eish mi b'shar. No, we did that already. Chaymer ba'bar mi ba'eish. Tchilas hayos l'nezek and mosrei l'cheresh shati v'kodin chayiv. Mashen kem ba'eish. Chaymer ba'eish mi b'bar. Eish is chumash of a bar. She'eish darka leilach l'hasik. Once again, eish is like Amazon. It travels to the victim, provides free delivery. Umi'edes lechol bein dover haroyla bein dover shein royla. Fire will consume everything and anything. And therefore, if you're responsible for a damage of fire, you'll be responsible for whatever it damages. Masha'en came to bar, while bar is very selective. There are limudim in the Torah that exclude many things from the liability of paying for a bar. For instance, let's have a look at Rashi. Bein royu bein she'ein royu. The Kamma Mefarsh of the Gemara is going to drill down. This is going to become a big part of our sugya. So we'll have to see the Gemara. What does it mean? Dover she'ein royla by a bar. Okay. Zog to Gemara. V'lisni chaymer b'sharmi babar. Why doesn't the Brisa add another way where shar is more chomer than bar? Shashar chayiv boyes hakelim. Ma she'ein came to bar. So the Gemara now is going to want to argue that what's called dover she'ein royal law by a bar, kalim. So the Gemara asks, it seems that the Gemara did make that distinction between eish and bar, that eish is chayiv on everything, and bar is not chayiv on dover she'ein royal law, and the Gemara has a havamina that the dover she'ein royal law means kalim. So for the Gemara, once you've established that if bar damages kalim, you're not chayiv because bar only is chayiv if it damages, if it kills an animal, if it injures an animal. But if a glass falls into it and it breaks, there the owner of the bar or the person responsible for the bar would not be chayiv. So if that's the case, and it's already highlighted by eish, why not highlight it in its relationship with shar as well? A bar will not be chayiv if kalim do it, if kalim are damaging the bar. Let's see Rashi. Chayiv bois kalim. Im shibron b'negicha or b'beita. What if an animal is wild and it purposely smashes kalim? She told her the Karen. Zokt Rashi, kalim ein ruin leish. Kalim are not normally going to be damaged by eish. She'ein derech lahasak kalim. Generally, I guess the Klicheres is talking about. Generally, kalim aren't combustible. So that's why the Gemara understands that the distinction between bar and eish is kalim. Well, you have that same distinction with bar and shor. Shashor chayv is a kalim, mashenkim bar. So why didn't the Brisa list kalim just like it listed kalim as a difference between eish and bar? Why didn't it also highlight it lagabe shor and bar? Zakt Gemara Hamani Rabbi Yehudi. There's actually machlokes tanoim, and Rabbi Yehuda holds the mechayev al niske kalim bebar. And we're going to see that sugya eventually, why Rabbi Yehuda holds that if kalim break in a bar, the person responsible for the bar is chayiv, and the chomol is not chayiv. So we're going according to Rabbi Yehuda. So you couldn't say that shor is chayiv on kalim and bar is not, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, bar is chayiv on kalim. Correct the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda.
According to the Brisa, but he doesn't.
I'm not understanding which Brisa.
The one that we just read.
Right. And our Brisa holds that bar is chayiv on kalim. So it couldn't say that shor is more chamer than bar, because shor is chayiv on kalim, and bar isn't, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, in fact, bar is. So that's why it couldn't be listed as a distinction. So what's bothering you is, so what about eish? How could it use it as a distinction between eish and bar? If bar is chayiv on kalim, and that's why you couldn't mention that as a distinction between shor and bar, how is it that our Brisa could list it as a distinction between eish and bar? I think, is that what you're asking?
No, I'm just saying, I'm wondering about the, it says here, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't go with the Brisa.
Why can't Rabbi Yehuda go with the Brisa? Why are you saying? Yeah, why would you say that Rabbi Yehuda is not going to? The Gemara is trying to say over here that our Brisa is Rabbi Yehuda, and that's why
that he says that you're hired for kalim.
And that's why the Brisa does not list off that shor is more chamer than bar, because shor is chayav on kalim and bar is not chayav on kalim. You cannot say that shor is more chamer than bar, because shor is chayav on kalim and bar isn't, if you hold that bar is. So since Rabbi Yehuda, since our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, or a Brisa Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that you are chayav for niske kalim bar, the Brisa couldn't offer as a distinction between shor and bar that shor is chayav on kalim and bar isn't, because in fact, according to Rabbi Yehuda, bar is chayav on kalim. Fact Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda im seifa. Let's look at the other case where we said a moment ago, chaymer be'eish mi babar, sha'eish darka leilach lahasik, umuledis lechal bein davar arayla bein davar she'en rayla, which we assumed means kalim, ma'sheikim babar. Fact Gemara, davar harayla maninu. What do we mean davar harayla? What's something that a fire normally consumes? Something combustible, like eitzim. What is davar she'ein royala? When we say an eish, you'll be mechuyev for the damages caused by your eish, even if it ruins something that it's not royala. Maninu kalim. The Gemara's assumption is that's referring to kalim because kalim are non-combustible. Masha ekein bebar, meaning bar would not be chayav on kalim. Frank the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, if you want to say it's going according to Rabbi Yehuda, and that's why he didn't say that shor is chayav on kalim and bar isn't, because bar is chayav on kalim. How could the Gemara, how could the same Brisa say that same distinction by eish, that eish is chayav on kalim and bar isn't? If it's Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda ha'amrit mechayiv Rabbi Yehuda al nitkei kalim bebar. So our problem here is it seems to indicate that eish is more chamer than bar because of kalim, but shor is not more chamer than bar because of kalim. You can't have it both ways. Is bar chayav on kalim or is it not? If you say it's going according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're going to have a problem with eish, because by eish the Brisa did say that bar is not chayav on davar she'ein royula, and if you're going to say it's going according to the Rabbanon that you're not chayav for kalim on bar, then you're going to have a problem why the Brisa didn't make that distinction between shor and bar. We're going to have to say that we're going according to the Rabbanon, who hold that you're not chayav on niske kalim bar. So if you're not chayav on niske kalim bar, frank the Brisa bikasha. The Brisa says that there's chomers of shor over bar. Why didn't the Brisa also list as an additional chomer that shor has over bar is that shor is chayav for kalim and bar is not chayav for kalim? Why? didn't the Brisa list that off? If we hold like the Rabbanon that bar is not chayav on kalim, that should have been a distinction made between shor and bar, and in fact that distinction was not made. Zok the Gemara the Tana of a shire. This is not a complete exhaustive list of every single chumrah. It is possible that there are chumras over shor to bar or anywhere bar to eish, from anything to anything. In all these examples given here, all these comparisons in this brisa, it's very possible that there are some items missing. And one of the items that's missing is that it could have said that shor is chai for kalim and bar is not. Frek the Gemara, my shire the high shire. The Tana will never just omit one item. If the Tana is not giving you an exhaustive list, they'll always miss at least two items. So can you give me another example of a difference that Tana could have highlighted that he didn't? My shire the high shire. So Tavara shire tamun. We know that tamun ba'esh is potter, meaning let's say you have a big pile of wheat, and in the wheat you hid your iPod, and someone's fire goes and burns your whole pile of wheat and burns the iPod. Now, locha is, since the iPod is tamun, it's not exposed, it's covered over, you're not chayiv for niskei eish on it. So the Gemara is stating that the Brisa could have said that bar is more chamer than eish, because bar is chayiv on tamun and eish isn't. Shor is more chamer than eish, because shor is chayiv on tamun and eish isn't. And it didn't mention that. So you see, it's not an exhaustive list. So huadin, it also missed the difference that shor and eish are chayiv for kalim and bar is not. That's one option. That's how to be kilim the brisa. It's going according to Rabban. Let's say it's going according to Rabbi Yehuda. The problem with Rabbi Yehuda is Rabbi Yehuda holds that you are chayiv on niskei bar. That you are chayiv on kalim babar. And Rabbi Yehuda, by the way, also holds that you're chayiv on tamun beish. So the problem is, if you are chayiv on niskei kalim babar, what does the brisa mean when the brisa said that eish you're chayiv davar shorayla and davar shein royla, but bar you're not chayiv on davar shein royla? We thought that davar shein royla means a bar, and it's not true because according to Rabbi Yehuda, you are chayiv on kalim and a bar. Zakt Rabbi Yehuda, I'm going to explain davar shein royla not as kalim, because in fact you are chayiv on kalim babar. But davar shein royla lav lasuya kalim. It's not referring to kalim when we say that a bar is not mechuyev on davar shein royla. You know what it's referring to? Ela lasuya likcha nirai v'sichsecha avanim. It's referring to fire that damaged property. It didn't consume property, but it damaged property. We discussed this case earlier, where rocks got singed, or you had a plowed field and the fire burning up over the land messed up the plowing. I guess you have to turn the soil over again. That type of damage is chayiv for eish, but it would never be chayiv by bar. You know why it would never be chayiv by bar? Because it's impossible for that to happen. Bar is a hole in the ground. How is a hole in the ground going to cause such a damage? So Zakt Rashi, I don't know if Rashi directly speaks about it. So we will have to.
Aren't you damaged or you're not damaged? Here, the Aish causes some damage. It's just not a lot of damage.
Right. So what you tell me by bor, it's impossible for that to happen.
No, you could fall into the bore and get lightly damaged, not destroyed. It could.
One second. So you're touching on exactly what I want to highlight. So let's first see what dash binira is. Dash binira is a term the Gemara is going to use a little bit later, but that also means that's what likchanera and tzich chavanot is. So dash binira. What if a shor b'mezid stomped on a field that was freshly plowed and then messes everything up? Shim dos hashor b'niroi v'niskavanaka. And the shor wanted to do damage. Shorei hashvar mulamadim b'disha. They know how to do disha. They know how to crush because they're used sometimes to crush kernels of wheat to help in the threshing process. So told the Karen, he would have been told of Karen, the Chai will shalom the Meniroi, Shakilkel. Mashen came bar, you know why bar isn't Chai for this? The Shaykh by Hazakarka. How is it possible for a bar to damage karka? It's impossible. It's an inanimate, non-moving item. So therefore, you will be chayiv on it for eish, you'll be chayiv on it for shar, but you won't be chayiv on it for bar. Tosfos has a little bit of an issue Tosfos has a little bit of an issue with it because Tosfos suggests likhaniroi. Zok Tosfos kabe dosh b'niroi. Later on, the Gemara is going to bring up dosh b'niroi, and we learned the Rashi on it just now. Here's Rashi Mashen came bebar the lo shayich behezek karka. Mashma the hachanami writes a lefarish kain Mashen came bebar the lo shayich behezek nir v'avanim. Right, a bar can't do any types of damages if it's just a hole in the ground. Frek Tosfos, if that's the case, if all we're doing is listing off damage that a bar cannot cause, I can give you a whole list of items to list. Because why didn't the Gemara say that Chaymer be'esh bar? Because Eish is mechuyev if it burns a house down and bar isn't. You know why bar isn't? Because bar can't burn the house down. Or the shard var makavum. So Tosfos has it a little bit shverlich to say the comparison is between something that Eish can do and bar cannot, because anything could fit that category. Rather, it should really be saying something that Eish could do and bar could do, but since it's not there for the bar to do, therefore you won't be chayiv for it, which I believe is what Avigdor was suggesting. So the Tosfos answers exactly what Avigdor said. Eliesh loymar licha nirai de chayiv. Licha nirai is chayiv if your Eish does that. You know why? Afal pi she'ein regilois shetazak Eish nir bavadim klal. It's very uncommon that this damage should occur. The primary damage, the royal law, the primary damage that Eish does is it burns things, it consumes things. Nevertheless, we're even mechayiv you to pay for Eish that doesn't do a typical damage, it does an untypical damage. Shenkin bebar, if you have a bar that will not typically damage, for instance, the pachas miyud, patami misa, a bar that's less than 10 tvachim deep, if an animal dies in it, the owner of the bar does not have to pay. Even de regilos lahamus the pachas miyud. And I think that's what Avigdor said. The comparison is find something that's not royal, not typically done by Eish, find something that's not typically done by bar, which happened, and show a distinction that by Eish it was chayiv and by bar it wasn't. Gewaltig. Sagt der Heilige Gemara weiter.
You asked it much better than me, Yossi. Thank you.
Well, Tosfos asked it. Sagt der Heilige Gemara weiter. A maskif law Rabashi. Rabashi had another kasha. Let's look at something else. Listening chaymer b'sharmi babar shashor chayiv boy shor psulei makdosh. What is psulei makdosh? Psulei makdosh is someone donated a carbon, and the carbon got a moon. So what do we do with that carbon? We allow anybody to redeem that carbon. You place the value of the carbon in cash, and you give that to the Beis Hamikdash, and then the Beis Hamikdash can buy another carbon without a mum, and you get to keep the animal. Now, there are restrictions in how you can use the animal. You're not allowed to use the animal to do avodah for you. You're not allowed to, if it's an ox, you can't use it to plow. If it's a sheep, you can't use it to shear its wool. It's lachila only. You're only allowed to shecht it and eat it, but you're not allowed to do anything else with it. So why didn't it say as follows? If your shor gores the shor of a psulim mikdashin, you're mechuyev to pay the damages. Masha'ekim bebar, but if a psulim mikdashin falls in to a bar, the owner of the bar will not be mechuyev to pay for it. Why? What is the difference? Where do these halachas come from? So Rashi opens everything up for us. Shor psulim mikdashin, shenifta. Someone was paid it, and he's allowed to use it for achila, not for giza. The nafal babar, and now this animal fell into a bar. So it damages because if my animal dies now, I can't do anything with it. Because I'm restricted. Potter bal habar, the bal habar will be potter. Tichsiv bal habar yishalem v'ameis yeloi. By bar it says the bal habar has to pay, and the mace belongs to him. And we'll see if he belongs to the mazik or to the nizik, but it belongs to somebody. Now, if the mace belongs to somebody, it must mean that there's some type of value that could be received from this dead animal. The problem is, psulei mikdashin sheniftu, you're only allowed to eat. If it became an avela, you're not allowed to do anything with it. Yotzazeh she'ena meishaloi. The afal gav de nifta, even though it's psulei mikdashin shenifta, you're restricted in what you can do with it. And if it dies, what would you do normally with an avela? You would feed it to a dog. But here you can't. It makes usher lachile leklavim. You cannot serve to your dogs. It says regarding Psulim Mekdoshim, Tizbach, you could shecht it to eat. You can make it into a zavach, which means you're going to eat it. V'lo yiza, you're not allowed to shear it and take its wool. Basar, you can take its meat. V'lo chalav, you're not allowed to take the milk from this animal. V'yachalta, you are allowed to eat it yourself. V'lo liklavecha. Psulim Mekdoshim, it's not appropriate to serve that to dogs. So now let's stop a second. Since by bar it says Vames Yaloi, therefore you're not mechuyev if a psule mekdosh niftu falls into your bar, because you cannot possibly have a Vames Yaloi. No one's going to be able to have a no from the animal, from the dead animal. However, what if a shor shtoist and killed psule mekdosh niftu? The mnakhay shor chay. The owner of the shore would be chayav to pay for the damages of this dead psulei hamikdash. The aksiv shorei eyu. There, by Karen, the only excluding factor is the fact that it says shorei eyu, and we say shorei eyu, v'lo shor shal hektish. But this is no longer a shor of hektish. Chivin and nifta shorei eyu krina bei. So it's not excluded from the nezikin of shor, because psulei hamikdash niftu is considered shorei eyu. Yet it is excluded from the nezakin of bar because it cannot fit v'hamesi aloi. V'yafal gav de b'shor namik siv hamesi aloi. Fact Rashi by shor it also says v'hamesi aloi. So that's also going to exclude psulei mekdosh niftu. Zogt Gemara mekumin lekamon lebailim metaplim b'nevelim. There we use it for a different halacha. It doesn't teach us this halacha. So we'll put that aside. So v'hamesi aloi by bar excludes psulei mekdosh niftu from the owner of the bar being mechuyev to pay. But a shor that shtoishes it, the bailam do have to pay. So frank the Gemara, Matzkas Rabashi, listening chamer b'sharmi babar, shashor chayiv boy, shor psulim mekdoshin, m'shenkin babar. You're mechuyev if your shor shtoishes someone's psulim mekdoshim, but you're not mechuyev if someone's psulim mekdoshim falls into your bar. Zaktamar I amrit b'shlamar abanan he. If you're going to learn this brayso is going according to the Rabbanon, where we've already omitted the chumrah of everything over bar, because bar is not chayiv and iskei kelim. And we've omitted the chumrah of tamun ba'esh, that esh is not mechuyev for something hidden. So we'll add one more to the list. Psulei mekdoshin gets added on to the list of things that the Tana omitted. It works out beautifully. Adi de shayir hach, shayir nami hach. It's not a conclusive list. Eli Amar Rabbi Yehuda, if you say that we're going according to Rabbi Yehuda, and in fact, according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's nothing missing from the list, because Taman Beish is not missing, because Rabbi Yehuda holds Yechayiv on Taman Beish. And Bar is not missing, because Rabbi Yehuda holds Yechayiv on this Bar. Right? And what he learned of Eish is Chayiv and Rayla and Ein Rayla, that's referring to Likha Niroi, right? Which is an unusual type of damage, and by Bar, you're not Mechuyev in an unusual type of damage. But there is nothing missing, it's a perfectly exhaustive list. And the only thing that would be missing is psulim mekdoshim. So we have a problem. Aliyah mit Yehuda, my shire, the high shire. Zakti Gemara, I'll tell you what it's missing. Dosh b'nirai. Shire dosh b'nirai. Zok Rashi. Shim dosh hashar b'nirai. V'nischaven lakach. Then you would be chayiv. If a shor damages a plowed field, a shor would be chayiv. But a bar would not be chayiv. So that's an example of a distinction between shor and bar that the brayso didn't list. So too, it missed the distinction between shor and bar about psulei hamikdash. Zok to Gemara, I don't think that's a good teretz. That shouldn't be considered a shear. You know why? Didn't the brayso already list off that a chumer that shor has over bar, that is dakar leilech ulahazik, that would already be the distinction between shor and bar. Rashi says the katani leil b'shor shadakar leilech ulahazik b'chol mezakah b'chlal. It will put anything that the shor can go damage, which is like lichaniri, but a bar cannot. So this pshat is very geshmak according to Rashi, that the reason why a bar can't do it is because a bar can't damage property. A bar can't move. But according to Tosfos, that we're just talking about something that's unusual by a bar. Oh no, it's still a good teretz, because because we're not talking about a royal or any royal. We're talking about Daki Lelech Lazik. So therefore, a shore would be mechuyev for Dosh B'niroi because it could do it, and the bar cannot be mechuyev for it because a bar cannot.
Isn't a boar really anything dangerous that you've left in the Rishus Harabim? Isn't that so?
Like packages like we had earlier, Avnei Zakino Masoi.
Yeah, I mean, if you drop something heavy, dangerous in the Rishus Harabim, and somebody's cart goes over it and it breaks the wheel, that's a keli that's been destroyed by that object that you've left in the Rishus Harabim.
So the question is would you be mechuyev for it?
Why wouldn't you be mechuyev for that?
I don't know. That's a very good question. I will have to wait till we get to the sugya that delves into the damages of bar, because there's a machlokes if you're only mechuyev if an animal falls into your bar, or if even.
Well, I'll give you another example. Let's say you've got a plow, right, and you're taking your plow in the Rishus Harabim to move it from one field to another. While you're going through the Rishus Harabim, your plow goes and digs a trench, right, a pit 10 tefachim deep in the Rishus Harabim. You're not paying attention.
Right,
and an animal walks in.
Classic case of bar.
That's a classic case of boar.
Right.
Right. So what if
The
it's
bar is the hole, not the plow.
the hole that you've created? That's right. I'm saying
If an animal falls into it, you'll be.
But let's say it's not an animal. Let's say somebody's keli falls into
Right.
it.
So that's the machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda also, if someone's keli falls into it and breaks, you're not chayiv, and the Chachamim hold. So you are chayiv. The Chachamim hold. If someone's keli falls into it and breaks, you're not chayiv. There's actually machlokes specifically about that. So when we get to that sugya, we'll wrestle that to the ground.
The Gemara means if somebody's vessel falls off the person, or it's when the soil Gemara falls in.
It could refer to multiple different cases. It could refer to both.
I thought it's only when.
So let's have a look. Even if I'm partially liable, I'm fully going to have to pay. Even if I only the partial cause, I have to pay. If I'm only partially responsible, nevertheless, I have to pay in full as if I caused everything. Keta, what would be an example of that? What if someone dug a bar that was only 9 tefachim deep, which could injure an animal but cannot possibly kill an animal? And another guy comes, and he dug the last tefach. We can call that the straw that broke the camel's back. If an animal falls in that bar and gets killed, only the achron is chayiv, which means really I'm only responsible for part of the negligence. I didn't dig the whole bar. I just dug the last tefach, yet I'm the one who's fully chayiv for any animal that dies in it. U'doloi Rebbe. This explanation in the Mishnah will not be consistent with Rebbe. The Tanya we learned, ha'chayfer bar tisha, u'ba'achar v'shlim asara, exactly this case that we're discussing, achrin chayiv, which works out perfectly for our Mishnah. But Rebbe is a dissenting opinion. Rebbe Yomer, achar achrin lemisa, but achar shneim l'nezakim. So according to the first Tana, even if an animal only got damaged, there, I'm still the last one to be mechuyev. If the animal dies, yes, I'm the one who made the bar of 10. I'm the only one. I'm the person who's marked to the homeless. But if the animal didn't die, the animal got damaged, why? Because I dug the 10th. I'm not the only cause for damage, because even at 9, the animal would have been damaged. Yet, the last guy is mechuyev according to the Rabbanah. According to Rebbe, so therefore, our Mishnah wouldn't stem according to Rebbe, because you see that even the Baal, I only am partly responsible. I dug the last tefach, but the person who dug the first 9 tefachim will also share in my responsibility. That's not what the Mishnah says. Papa Omar, maybe our Mishnahs are talking about the Misa, the Misa v'divrei HaKol. Even though you dug 9 out of the 10 tefachim, and I dug the 10th tefach, we still look at it like you were partners with me in the damage, yet I'm the one who's left holding the bag. I'm mechuyev and all. So if you look at Misa, our Mishnah could even be consistent with Rebbe. Ikud Amri, there are others who took a different perspective and said, Lema Deloika Rebbe. Their initial argument was this would not be consistent with Rebbe, and then Rapapa came along, Omar Papa Lamisa v'divrei. So now we have two options of how to learn a Mishnah. Either a Mishnah speaking where the animal got damaged in the bar, and we say that only the last person who dug the last tefach is chayiv, even though the person who dug the bar that was 9 tefachim would have also damaged the shar. Or we could say it's speaking about Misa, which means we both contributed to a bar of 10, you did 9, I dug 1. Yet the last person, the guy who dug the last one is Chai. Masakavla Reb Zera. Frank Reb Zera, Vasuleka, could you not find me any other cases that would also fit the description of Ichsharti b'mixas niskai, I should be chayiv in full? So Tosfos right away asks, Vim Taimar, and he nami the ikatuva. Okay, let's say there are other examples. Atiki ruchla, lechshav elezel. The Gemara now has to figure out every possibility of such a scenario and list it off. Zokt Tosfos, no. The reason why the Gemara is itching to find another example is mishum the dachik lukma masnisin the like Rebbe, like Rav Papa Lamisa. We're not so happy with explaining the Mishnah that it should be inconsistent with Rebbe, or even according to Rav Papa, that it should be referring to Misa, because technically the last guy did the whole thing when it came to Misa, because a bar of 9 tvachim has no shaykhs to killing an animal. So therefore, the Gemara wants to suggest other examples that would fit our Mishnah a little bit better. And these aren't prices; these are just imaginative cases that the Gemara is coming up. You had a wild ox and you gave it over to 5 people to watch. 4 out of 5 were doing their jobs. One of them neglected. He wandered away and he wasn't focusing on this ox. The hizak and the damage, chayiv, the person who wandered away will be chayiv. So he's only part of the cause for the damage because he was only one of the 5 shomrim. And since he was part of the cause for the damage, he's going to be chayiv for it all. Hekadami. Let's analyze this case because it won't fit. If you're telling me that of such a wild ox, you needed 5 people full time to keep it down, and he walked away, well, the Pshita, the Yukavit, he did the whole damage. He was the one who broke the Shemir chain. Elo, you have to say, the Balav Yunami Minter. Without him, they could have watched it anyway. So then Mike Ovid. So then why is he chayiv at all? So this is not a good example of a Shati b'mitzvah nisbay, because it's either all or nothing. So that case wouldn't be possible. What if there was a fire that was existing and you threw fuel on the fire? You threw bundles of wood on the fire, which allowed it to spread further, and because of you, it spread further and damaged somebody. Again, you're only a partner in the damage because there was already an existing fire. Let's drill down and see if it could be something that would be a shared burden. If the fire would never have reached that victim, if you didn't put the chavilas on it, pshita, of course you're chayiv for everything because you did do everything. Ela de balavi azla, or you're going to say that the fire would have reached there anyway. Maybe I just hastened it. My covet, then I didn't really do anything at all. Why am I chayiv at all? So we reject that case. Baskafar papa, well, ikah the time. So the 2 cases that we just mentioned, you can just brush off because they're made up cases. But the 3rd case, we're going to have to make head and tails out of. It have to make sense because it's a price. So here's where we talk about the discrimination based on people's weight. Well, hey sheyashvu al safsalecha. There were 5 people sitting on a bench. V'loy shavru, and it didn't break. U'ba'echad, and now another fellow comes along. V'yashav alov. I think I'm going to join you guys. He plops himself down on the bench and kirosh v'shavroi. The last guy is chayiv. If he had orange hair, we would call him Orange Crush, right? So the achron is chayiv. Zok the Gemara
Doesn't have to do with his weight, really.
We're-
Even very thin person.
but he's the straw that broke. I'm happy you brought it up because that is exactly what we're discussing. The Amar Papa said, who was this 5th guy? Kagoyin Papa Ba'aba, who was a very fat and heavy guy. Now, this doesn't make any sense at all because Chaim is asking any person eventually, when you overload the limit, is going to crush the bench. So, Frank Gemara, hey Chedami, Ilema the Balav Iuloi Itbar. If you're going to tell me that if this fat fellow didn't sit down, the bench wouldn't have broken, Shita, it's Pashit that he's Chayiv because he's the guy who did all the damage. Ella, what are you going to argue? The Balav Iu Nami Itbar, the bench would have broken even if he didn't sit on it. So then, my covet. So why is he doing anything wrong at all? So therefore, this is not a good example of someone who's only partially responsible for the damage of the bench. The problem is with the first two examples, you can just brush them off. This is a brisa. We have to explain the brisa. How could you explain why the last guy would be mechuyev? Either if it wasn't for him, it wouldn't have broken. And then why is the brisa telling me this? It's positive. There's no chiddush. And if without him would have broken anyway, so then what's takam pshat of the brisa? So we need to understand why this is a chiddush and why it's true. So tomorrow, loy tzricha, you have to say the belav iu have a mitbar betreisha. If he didn't sit on it, it would have broken because the weight of the existing people sitting there was wearing out that bench, and after 2 hours, eventually it would have popped. The hash, now that he sat on it, itbar bechadasha. The moment he sat on it, it went karush. So he caused it. The Amr Lay, they'll tell him, ilav at, if you wouldn't have plopped yourself down there, have a yosvin and tvei porta, we would have sat a little longer, the kaimin, and we would have got up before the bench crushed. You were the one who was the straw that broke the camel's back. You made it happen now. So, Frank Gemara, still, why should he be chai? Let him tell them, ilav atun, if it wasn't for you, b'didil have a mitbar. My weight didn't break it. My weight combined with your weight broke it. So why should I be mechuyev? Zok Gemara, lo tzricha, the bahadi de samach b'hu tavar. He never sat on the bench. He leaned on them and pushed down on his weight through them, and he held them down. And that's why he's chayiv, because he held them down. Frank the Morris, so pshita, he managed to do damage. So why is this Bryce telling me chiddush that he's chayiv? Since he wasn't physically on the bench, it was just his force pushing down on them, pushing down on the bench, and that's not mechayiv somebody. Kamashulon the koichay kegufay dami. His koyach is just like his guf. The chalecha the gufay tavar koichay nami tavar. We know in physics there's a transfer of energy. The energy and the weight that he transfers into the people sitting on the bench transfers right through them into the bench. Now, this Gemara seems like it's a simple Gemara, but it's extremely, extremely complicated. And let me tell you why. Just give me some time to try to develop the sugya, and then we'll see why it's such a complicated Gemara. So let me go back a second. How did you understand Rav Papa? Did he say that only the last guy was the fat guy, or are they all fat? How would you understand this Gemara at first glance? Kagoy Papa Baba means the last guy who busted the bench was Papa Baba, or they were all Papa Babas. So let's have a look. Hey Chadam. Pshita. It's Pasha that he's high. Ella de Balav Iu Nami Itbar would have broken anyway. My covered, what did he do? So what is the Gemara suggesting at this point? It would have broke anyway, and therefore he didn't do anything. Who should be chayiv? Those 4 guys sitting down. The problem is, Frek Tosfos, and we're going to learn Tosfos in just a minute, why would those 4 guys sitting down be mechuyev? Is a bench made to sit up? Yes. So it's Mesa Machmas Malacha. So why should I be mechuyev?
Maybe it says maximum capacity.
LMI, they were fat. They were over the capacity. So therefore, Tosfos has a tzad to learn that in fact they were all over the capacity. They were all fat. They all were going to break it. So let's have a look at Tosfos, because this makes a huge enough halacha. Halacha l'maisa. You have somebody who has a bench. We normally assume when a person puts out a bench, he's letting anybody sit on it, provided you're not a big zetcher, you're going to bust the bench. A normal person can sit on the bench. So the question is, what if 4 normal people sit on a normal bench and bust it? Are they chayiv or not? And this is Hashayla halacha l'maisa. So Tosfos has a very fascinating analysis of this sugya. Look at this. It's 7:47. It's 7:47. You know what? I got to finish. I apologize. We're going to have to do this a little bit later. We'll have to find some other time. But right now we have a daf to finish. We have 3 minutes left. Zok to Gemara Vayta. Zok to Gemara Vayta. We have to find more halachas. Okay, Gavaltik. V'suleka. Are there no other examples that would fit into our Mishnah? But Iko de Tanya. We have other ones. Hikeyu asar b'nei adam ve'eser maklis. 10 people are beating the daylights out of this poor victim. Bein b'basachas, bein b'zachas. Doesn't make a difference if they hit him one at a time. We hit them all together. Umeis kulam paturin, because we don't know who is the person that actually killed this guy. But if they hit him one at a time, the last guy who hit him is chayiv, because he's the one who pushed the fellow over that threshold between life and death. So this is a perfect example. According to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, you have a beautiful example. he was only mixes niskoy because he only did the last bit, yet he's high for everything. Why isn't that listed? Why isn't that an option for our Mishnah? Because we're speaking about Nezika and we're not speaking about murder. We don't want to tell on the Mishnah is going according to Rabbi ben Meseira and not according to the Chachamim. It's a machlokes. Didn't we just say on Amar Aleph that it doesn't go according to Rebbe, who holds that everybody's chayiv? Zaklimora, the loik Rebbe uchurabanim makmina. Yes, we'll tell on the Mishnah not like Rebbe who's a yochid, but like a rabbin. That will do. But Rabbi ben Meseira, the loik rabbanon, but still on the Mishnah like the yochid, like Rabbi ben Meseira, not like rabbanon, loy makmina. That we're not going to do. Chavti b'tashlum niskay. Chavti b'niskay loy katan. It doesn't say chavti b'niskay. It says b'tashlum niskay. What is the difference? Zok Rashi b'niskala katani lahava mashma she yishalim shor gomar chai u'yitlos nevel. Chavta b'niska would mean your oxen are 1,000. Here's $1,000. I'll deal with the nevel. It says b'tashlum b'niska, meaning I only have to fill you up. So you had an animal's worth 1,000. Now it's dead. It's worth 100. I only have to give you $900. Tanina lo de tanar rabbanan. In fact, we're going to bring a raya from a brisa that you don't have to give him a whole new animal. Rather, you just pay him the difference between the value of his dead animal and the value of a live animal, and let him deal with liquidating the nevel. Zok says Tashlumei Nezek. Malamed teaches us Shabaylim Ataplim Benevela. The Bailim have to deal with the nevela. Immediately, how do you know that the Bailim have to be Metalab Benevela? That's a big disadvantage. Right now, you got to be busy. I'm a regular guy. You damaged me, and I have to now be busy with the nevela. But that's Allah. Amar Bami. The Amar Krat says in the pasuk, Maki Nefesh Payme Yishal Mena. If a man damages someone's animal, Yishal Mena, and we dashin. A tricky Yishal Mena you have to pay, and the Yashli Mena you got to fill him up. So that means he has to hold on to the nevela. If Kahana Marmeocha, it says Torah Yuvayeu. Now this is referring to a shomer, not someone who does damage. Torah Yuvayeu Eid a trei for lo Yishalom. So we dashin at a trei for Yishalom. You paid the difference between the full value and the treifa, the animal that was torn apart because you didn't watch it. Treifa at lo Yishalom. But you don't have to pay for the treifa itself because you get to force the nizik to keep it. Chizki Omar Mehacha. It says Vameis Yaloi Lenizik. Who gets the mace? The nizik gets it. The Chintana de Chizkia Vameis Yaloi. That's talking about if your animal did damage. Lenizik Atoim Lenizik Oy Eino Ela Lamazik. How do you know Vameis Yaloi means it belongs to the nizik? Maybe Vameis Yaloi means to the mazik. Amrit Loy Kachoy. Doesn't make sense to say that the mace goes to the mazik. My loy kachaya. Why? Amar Abaye isol kedaita nevela the mazik havya. If you hold that the nevela goes to the mazik, then all it should have said was lichtay rachmana shar tachas ashar. The lishtay. Rather the person shar tachas ashar v'amesi loy. If the mazik's got to pay for the whole amount, I know the mace is his because he's paying for a new shar. Lo mali. It must be that when it says loy, it means after the payment, after the shor tachas ashor, the nizik still owns the carcass and has to deal with it. Utricha. We have a pasuk by Adam Hamazik, we have by Shomer, and we have by my shor damaging your shor. In each of these three cases, the Torah tells us that the nevela goes to the nizik. Why do I need the pasuk to tell me in all three places? Why couldn't I figure out one from the other? Because of Rachman Maka Behemi Shalmena, if the Torah only taught us that by Adam Hamazik, there the damage, the victim has to deal with the nevela. It's not a common thing that a person should go kill someone's animal. So it's so unusual. So we'll let the nizik deal with it. I will try for the shchicha. But if you're a shomer and you don't watch things, it's a common thing that there'll be wolves that'll rip apart animals. It's something that's more common. Maybe there we need to protect the nizik better, Amaloi, and maybe we would force the mazik to deal with the dead animal and have the shomer pay in full for a new animal. Shricha, that's what the Torah tells you here as well. Let the nizik deal with the nevela. Yashmin and treifa, and if we only had the case of treifa, mishum de memela. That's because you know I am not mechuyev. I didn't damage you. It happened by itself because I wasn't watching, so I'm not as liable. You went damaged somebody else. Maybe you should be sanctioned. Maybe you should have to give him a whole new animal. If you knew Shomer and Adam Hamazik, the Adam Hamazik, the Torah had to tell us because it was Lo Shchiach. and the Torah had to tell us by a shomer because it's Mela. Avo v'ameshi aloi d'shchicha uva yadayim, in a case of a shor damaging another shor, which is relatively common, and the shor is doing yadayim, aim aloi, maybe I don't need a pasuk. V'yash minon hameshi aloi, and if it said v'ameshi aloi, I would have. I'm sorry. Maybe you would say that the mazik has to deal with the carcass. Commercial in the Torah that even in the case of shor mazik, the nizik has to deal with the nevela. And if we only had the case of a meishi aloi by a shor that's mazik a shor, we should have a minor kamazik. That's because I didn't damage you myself. If my property damages you, we're going to be a little lenient and we won't make you have to deal with the nevela. But when you're talking about a shomer where it's something that you neglected your duty, or if on the other mazik you actually damaged someone's shor, maybe there we would force you to deal with the nevela. Shricha, that's why the Torah had to tell us in all these three cases that the nizik has to deal with the nevela. Omer le Rav Kahana l'Rav. Time of the cause of Rachman of Ameshi Eloi. It's only because it says Ameshi Eloi. Halav hachi have a meaning nevela the mazik ava. Are you telling me otherwise we would say that the mazik has to deal with the nevela? That's not true, because we already learned yesterday that if the mazik wants to pay back, he can pay back with bottles that he has to return with beer bottles. So if I can pay with beer bottles, let me give him his nevela. I should be able to pay with his nevela. Today, Kamma trefis, yovel. Even if I had a whole bunch of trefis in the shed, I can give those to the nizik as well to have to deal with. The Omer Mar Yochav l'Rabbi Shabbat Kesef Vafilu Subin today. So Vafilu Subin Kamma today, me boy, the nizik's own dead animal. Surely I can give him. I can give him my own dead animal. So what does it mean? What does it mean that the nizik deals with the nevela? So as soon as the animal is killed, it's fresh meat. It can be sold off as treif immediately. If you leave it 3 hours, it's going to get rotten and it's going to be worth much less. So the halacha is the moment the animal gets killed, at that point the nevela is assessed. And let's say it was originally worth 1,000, and now it's a fresh roadkill. It's worth 300. The mazik only has to pay 700, and that 700 he can pay in Shabbat Kesef. They only have to pay 700. And if the nizik doesn't get a towing company right away to deal with it, and by the time he's ready to sell it, that nevela is so much rotted, now it's only worth 100. That $200 gap is on the nizik, not on the mazik. Okay, we will stop here, Bez Hashem, and we will be mamshuk tomorrow. I feel very bad that I went way over, but it was late. So I'm going to learn Tosfos now anyway, because it's a very interesting Tosfos. Let's just look at this to Gavaltic Tosfos, because it's the Nogel Allah. The Farish Rishbam, the Noket Papa Bar Abba, Lefi Shelastam B'nei Adam, who shol L'chol Abama Elav Leishavala. If someone puts out a bench, it's assumed that he's letting people pass by sit on. The bottom Tosfos on Yud Amud Aleph. Ki Stam Sapsel Osil Lakach. A normal bench is made for people to sit on. So if regular normal people sit on a bench who are not overweight, and the bench breaks, they're going to be potter because they're a shoyel, but this is Mesa Machmas Malach. Aval Papa Bar Abba, Shu Mushuna, the Kaved Mishar B'nei Adam, Papa Bar Abba, who's fatter than everybody else, Stama Ein Shoeloi. He's not considered a shoyel. He's not considered a mazik, because when the bench says one size fits all, it means one size fits most. Ulafi Rushoi.
What person itself also is not proper. Told him what you have.
But I guess there's a certain amount of people that fit on the bench. I have 4 people fit on the bench. 4 normal people can sit on the bench. When we said it's a person like Papa Bar Abba, it must be all of the people in this story are Papa Bar Abbas. Why? Because the Gemara says a couple of lines later, they told him, we had 2 hours till the bench broke with us sitting there. We wouldn't have sat at 2 hours. But mashma, the imhaya nishbar, if they would have waited there 2 hours, it would have broke. They would be chayiv. Why would they be chayiv? To make some machmas malacha. It must be that they were also overweight. Umil if maskana the mishani the bahadi the kasama chalayu lemaisa the maskana was where he's holding them down. There ain't sarach lefarish the chayiv elo achrim mulvad. They're only the guy leaning on them had to be overweight because he's being mechuyev because he's holding them down. That's the maskana. So now halacha lemaisa umitoich kach, because of this halacha and the understanding of the Rashbam of this sugya, Potter arba b'nei adam sheyashvu al saf selechet shel almana v'shavruhu. Nebuch, there was a yidin and almana who had a bench. Four people sat on it that were not overweight. The bench broke. And she was very upset. She had a big damage. She took it to the entire, and they're upset your potter. The Rashbam said your potter. They're potter to pay because they're not overweight. And the bench should have held them, and it's made some law. But Rabbi Zeriel, Rabbi Zeriel argued under Rashbam's pshat, and he felt that these people have to pay, even though they were not overweight. The problem is, according to the way we understood the sugya now, if they were not overweight, they shouldn't be mechuyev. So why does Rabbi Zeriel want to be mechuyev them? The teretz is because Rabbi Zeriel learns the sugya differently, like Rabbeinu Tam. For Rabbeinu Tam Afarish, the Nokat Papa Bar Abba only, not because of the previous cases, Papa Bar Abba is only the gay for the last line. And only for there did we need it to be someone like Papa Bar Abba. But Davka Papa Bar Abba, Shu Adam Kavit, was very heavy. He prevented them from, he's a big fat guy. When he leans on them, they can't budge. A regular guy who leans on them, they'd be able to push him off. In such a case, inunamu pashu, then they're to blame as well. They should have stood up when he leaned on them. So the only reason why we introduced Papa Baba is only because we need an example of somebody who can hold other people's down. Therefore, v'kulan chayovin, even if 4 people sit on the bench and it breaks and they're not overweight, but they could have gotten up, they will all be chayiv. I don't know why it's not called Mesa Machmas Malacha. I guess Lamaisa, if you overloaded it, like Chaim says, it still has a weight capacity. Rav Papa says right away at the beginning of the sugya, it's speaking by Papa Barabba. But the Gemara has a whole shakla b'tarya till it comes to the maskana that he's leading on them. So it must be Rav Papa already knew that maskana, and it was just a Gemara sorting out to try to understand what Rav Papa meant. But Akalpan is a huge nafrinu laloch. If 4 people sit on the bench and it breaks, if they're not overweight, should they be chayiv or not? Rabbeinu Tam held they would be chayiv, like Rabbi Zeriel. The Rashbam said that they would not be chayiv. We'll stop here.